I think it.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It's nice to see so many people here and people online. And today we have Sue Prescott to present our program. Sue is a therapist in private practice in Seattle. She's a lifelong Theosophist who is a national lecturer for the Theosophical Society and has worked for over 40 years with children, couples, families, and her topic today is the mystery schools. Mystery school refers to the groups of sages and seers who imparted information about spirituality or the ancient wisdom throughout time. Today we will examine the lesser and greater mysteries of esoteric knowledge as we look into transformation within the individual for the purpose of attaining esoteric wisdom. And now our speaker, Sue Prescott.
So, well, welcome. So glad to see you all. Wonderful. And I'm going to share my screen and keep my fingers crossed. Looks like it's doing its thing. There. Wonderful. Okay. Now, do you see me? It looks like you do. Right there in the first. Did we lose contact or anything?
Perfect. That's good, sir.
We're good. Now, you guys can see me okay? Someone give a thumbs up and hear me. Oh, good. Okay, because I didn't hear anything and I got worried. Great. Well, welcome. This is wonderful. So because I will be sharing with you some less commonly known information, I'd like to share with you my sources. I've taken most of my information from Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, who many of you know is one of the founders of the Theosophical Society in 1875. Her major work is The Secret Doctrine, and in it she goes into let's see, I'm just getting my cursor to work right. Anthropogenesis, the origin and evolution of a human being, and cosmogenesis, the origin and evolution of the universe. Then the rest of my sources are, as you can see, another book by HPB, and then a wonderful book, small, it's on the internet, Grace Noki's The Mystery Schools, and it's only Blavatsky, basically, that she uses for that. Excellent book. Then Leadbeater's book, Masters in the Path, Annie Besant's book on initiation, and also an article by Annie Besant, and then Boris Dazurkov's article, The Winter Solstice, and then Manly P. Hall's books there you can see listed, Secret Teaching of All Ages and Man, the Grand Symbol of the Mysteries. So the mysteries, to discuss these fully, I need to start with where, when, and why they began. I'm going to start with a brief summary about the beginning of manifestation after Pralaya. And that's a time when there's no manifestation. And I'm going to summarize how humanity came into being. And this will give you a clear idea of why the mystery schools started in the first place. So bear with me with this background. So science speaks about the formation of a planet, likely from a black hole. And you can see this picture from NASA. Manifestation in our world is poetically described in The Secret Doctrine in the stanzas of Dijon. Now, that's an ancient Tibetan manuscript that The Secret Doctrine is based on. The stanzas refer to this nothingness before manifestation as the darkness that breathes over the slumbering waters of life. And there's a correspondence with Christianity and Judaism in Genesis. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. The stanzas go on to explain the start of manifestation with darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the waters. And then in Genesis, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So as manifestation continues, it proceeds with gases formed from the simplest of molecules, maybe hydrogen, helium, or other ionized gases. And Blavatsky teaches that these clouds begin to form a sphere that is highly spiritual at the beginning, and then it consolidates. Over millions of years, our planet becomes more defined and then solid, and human beings are created. At first, we are only spiritual. We're taught in the secret doctrine that we humans evolved through a series of root races. Now, this isn't anything to do with race on the physical plane with Caucasian or African, any of that. It's developmental stages or waves of humanity, it's been called. Now, they're highly spiritual at this point. Now, the first root race comes from high angelic beings called Dhyani Chohans. And there's not a picture that I can share with you because they're arupa, meaning having no form. But Jeffrey Hodson, he's the clairvoyant theosophical writer. He gives us pictures of the denser members of the angelic kingdom called Rupa Devas. And so you can see the pictures there with the various labels underneath, the mountain deva and then the four. And they give you a hint about the higher celestial beings who help create humans. So how did the human being form? The first root race or developmental stage was projected by the angelic hierarchy out of their own essences. And the stanzas in Blavatsky tells us they threw off their shadows or astral etheric bodies to make the form for humanity. So the picture on the left shows the etheric body of a human being. It extends off the skin, and it is what was exuded out of the angelic beings to make our form, the original form. So to describe briefly how this took place, Blavatsky similarized it to what occurs with mediums at a seance. As you may know, when Blavatsky wrote The Secret Doctrine, spiritualism was very popular in the 1880s, and people were going to mediums to make contact with someone who had died. Blavatsky said that sometimes materialized forms would ooze out of the bodies of certain mediums, and these forms usually just vanished, but they could be made more solid. And this is how the angelic beings oozed out the form for the first spiritual humans. It's a process similar to fission, where one part becomes two. And this humanity was mindless. They're just the etheric form. The second root race comes from the first in a process called budding or sweatborn, because it exudes out of the original, just like the sea anemone. And it has offsprings on it. You can see the various small anemones there, which will grow bigger and depart from the parent anemone. So after millennia, the next level is the third root race of the Lemurians. Blavatsky described them as being wrapped in a cloak of mental somnolence or a thick fog, operating only from instinct. Now, it's during this third root race that the human beings are given their minds. The secret doctrine teaches that divine angelic beings called Manasaputras, members of the angelic kingdom, use the flame of the intellectual solar fire to awaken self-consciousness. Now, this is our awareness of where our bodies are in the room, our thinking, we're aware of how we're looking or sitting. Everybody has the same awareness. And this is what they incarnated into the ethereal human form. So in Greek mythology, this is accomplished by Prometheus, who stole the spark of the sacred fire from Mount Olympus. But when the god Zeus found out, Prometheus was punished. Zeus was furious, and so he chained Prometheus to a rock where an eagle, his emblem, would peck at Prometheus's liver during the day, and it would grow back overnight. Now, eventually, Prometheus was rescued by Heracles. This picture shows the same thing happening. The liver isn't quite so high, and then the blood is coming from the thigh, but the liver is tucked under the lungs, and it would, the picture of it dripping blood. So now the liver is so important to the body, it cleans toxins from the blood, among other functions. But it's so remarkable in that if less than half is gone, it'll grow back. So it's just a very interesting. There's a lot of other functions with the liver that I could go into, but another time. So now we got our minds that way. So in addition to getting our minds, humanity was also given divine guidance by the Manasaputras about morality, planting corn and wheat, which they needed to survive, as well as the arts and sciences, including architecture. And this is seen in the ruins of the Mycenae citadel in Greece from the third root race. So we were larger and less dense. So we're in the fifth root race. This is the third root race. And this is large boulders that could have been moved back then. So another example, Blavatsky tells us, is Tiwanaku in Bolivia. And you can see the person's about 24 feet high. And that's maybe how high we were in the third root race. And then another example is Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean off of Chile, South America's Chile, and the Moai made these statues. And you can see the middle picture shows how large they were. So after eons of evolution, the third race humans became capable of all emotion. And the mind develops so there's clear power and choice. So this happens over millions of years. So we're coming to why there were mystery schools. Blavatsky says that there were no mystery schools at this time because the ancient wisdom was common for all to know. We could read each other's minds, and we didn't have two eyes then. We had cyclopean one eye because we could see through things and be perceiving life that way. So why the mystery schools were developed? She says that the ancient wisdom was common for all to know. Now, the ancient wisdom succinctly is theosophy, or detailed knowledge about the creation of the universe, how the laws of nature worked, and information about the angelic kingdom and higher planes and all sorts of things. So the Lemurians at first were semi-divine and pure, and there was no evil at that point. But Blavatsky teaches that so I can see I missed a slide. So that's the ancient wisdom. The creation of the universe is part of that. And then she says that as mankind became more material, the individuality of each person asserted itself and selfishness developed. And this urges the human on to greater progress. Then so we need this strong self-centeredness to develop a strong center within to be ourselves and to be self-contained and individual. And then when that develops, then unselfishness can grow from that. But unfortunately, there's the potential for an abuse of power. So this is why the mystery schools were founded. HPB says that many of Lemuria followed the path of spiritual inclination, but others chose a path of selfishness and greed. She writes, the mysteries of heaven and earth revealed to the third root race by their celestial teachers in the days of their purity became the great focus of light, the rays from which became weakened as they were shed upon the too material soil. With the masses, they degenerated into sorcery. So now, what sorcery is? It refers to black magic, where someone selfishly goes after what they want and takes advantage of people in the process. It can involve manipulating the elementals and other supernatural beings through the will. It may involve ritual. And this is in contrast to white magic or right-hand magic, which is selfless and done for others. So an example is the priest's blessing in the form of a cross and the sprinkling of holy water there by the Orthodox Christians. Now, this is an important point here. On the other side, we human beings can unconsciously do black magic with negative thinking about others if we're feeling hurt by someone, and we may even want someone to be hurt. Now, currently, this thinking doesn't bring much harm to the other because our will is not very developed. But Blavatsky teaches us to be mindful of what we think, because she says between right and left-hand magic, there is but a cobweb thread. So our natural self-interest, which we need to survive, can overtake us where we forget about others. So with the development of selfishness, Blavatsky describes the need for limiting the human being's power. Hence the necessity of gradually taking away from man the divine knowledge whose evil side was ever threatening one's neighbor, and whose power for good was lavished freely only on the self. So magic had been the power of the Atlantean black magicians. They had used it as a natural part of their life, of the Lemurians. And normal people also had magic. But the Atlanteans in the fourth root race is where we went wrong, and it was used to dominate the masses. Until then, there had been no reason to have the mystery schools. HPB writes, selfishness born out of desires and passions hitherto unknown, and too often knowledge and power were abused, until finally it became necessary to limit the number who knew how to wield that power. So thus rose initiation. So you can see the Hindu ceremony there and knighthood. So in the secret doctrine, HPB teaches us that because of this abuse of powers, the high spiritual being called the Lord of the world, the planetary spirit or Logos, or Hindus Sanat Kumara, all the same, selected a band of co-workers who were committed to protecting the ancient wisdom and put it to good use. And the great brotherhood was formed. So you can see Kuthumi and Moria on the right. And this is also written about by Gordon D. Peruker in his book, the silent watcher of the globe, the Lord of the world, through the spiritual magnetic attraction of like to like, attracted certain human individuals of the third race to form a focus of spiritual light on earth, the start of the brotherhood of the Mahatmas. So Blavatsky writes that those few elect thus became the sole guardians of the mysteries revealed, passing the knowledge on to those most fit to receive it, and also who wouldn't misuse it. And that's like the angelic kingdom, the laws of nature. So this was 12 million years ago. And HPB says that these divine teachers were the germ of a hierarchy which never died since that period. They inspired the grand religions of the past and helped with discoveries of science and philosophy. And they will continue to send forth their help as long as mankind requires their care. So some of the world teachers are Jesus, Zoroaster, and the deity Ahura Mazda, and that's where Iran now is, in that area. The Buddha, Hermes, Egypt, Lao Tzu from China. So the first mystery schools were established 4 to 5 million years ago in Atlantis. And they had to be secret and passed on information only to those who passed trials and probations. And that's because the secrets about how to control the spiritual forces and other human beings were being misused. The mysteries were imparted to the intellect of that race when the average Atlantean had begun to fall too deeply into sin to be trusted with the secrets of nature. So the purpose of the mystery schools is to prepare people to be able to receive the esoteric knowledge of spirituality, as well as to give rise to new recruits for the brotherhood. So now the mysteries are divided into two distinct sections, the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries. The lesser mysteries is what we have in our world. They're simple moral codes for people to live by, and they prepare us to be ready for the greater mysteries, where deeper information is given. So you can see the 10 Commandments of Christianity on the left, very similar to Judaism's, and the Hindu principles formalized by Patanjali. And they're all similar guidelines around the world, not hurting people or stealing or lying or coveting someone's belongings. So the difference between the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries is depicted in the various religions. For example, in Christianity, the Bible says Jesus spoke to the multitudes in parable, but when they were alone, he expounded all things to his disciples. So Jesus was an initiate in the mystery school of the Essenes, who are thought to be the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this picture is of Qumran, where the scrolls were found. In Judaism, the lesser mysteries were given to the multitudes through the Torah, or the first 5 books of the Old Testament. But the secret wisdom, the Chokhmah Nestorah, was given only to a few, orally, face to face, and mouth to ear. Similarly, in the Greek Eleusinian mysteries, the lesser mysteries were taught to candidates who were mistai. Now that's closed of eye and mouth. It means not having intuition yet. You can't see into things. And you can see the mystery school is on the vase. The greater mysteries in Greece were taught to candidates who had developed epoptai, or clear seeing. That's the intuitive perception of the divine realities and is the highest state of initiation. In Hinduism and then Buddhism, Buddha Gautama had one doctrine for his lay disciples, the other for his arhat. His principle was to refuse no one admission into the ranks of candidates, but never to divulge the final mysteries except to those who had proved themselves during long years of probation to be worthy of initiation. So we need to prove ourselves through small tests throughout our daily lives over many lifetimes where we choose the right-hand path and are not susceptible to any kind of selfishness or black magic, even unconsciously. And as Jung describes, Carl Jung, that unconscious is vast and needs to be deeply explored. So what the lesser mysteries taught us how to be ready for the greater mysteries correlate perfectly to Blavatsky's levels of consciousness. So as you can see, the spiritual higher self includes the absolute or God or Atman, the infinite divine, and then the Buddhic field, our intuition, and the higher mind, which receives intuition and utilizes reason and wisdom, Buddhi Manas. Then the personal, everyday self is the lower mind, the everyday mind, Kama Manas, with the emotions being Kama, and that's that level, different from the mind and different from the physical body. So these levels can be used as a guide to see what the mystery schools taught, because they correlate well. So starting at the lowest level, the physical, the lesser mysteries include self-purification of the body. This means eating right, not too much, vegetarianism, and no tobacco smoking, drug use, or alcohol. The emotions were to be regulated. All negative emotions were to be curtailed. Accepting what happens in life was important, as well as learning detachment and desirelessness. So this is what will help us. The next level of consciousness, the mind, and this is such an important area, it was to be developed by controlling one's thoughts and realizing how they affect us and our environment. The purpose of life was taught and how to consciously participate in its evolution through, along with karma and reincarnation. We would learn that. Corresponding to the Buddhic level, the mystery schools emphasize developing the intuition through self-study. So now that's part of the unconscious too. Studying the shadow, asking why. And this helps develop our intuition. So self-study also means studying what the high teachers taught, the Theosophy and all, as well as contemplation and meditation. So lastly, the awareness of unity, the Atman, develops through meditation and altruism. As HPB says, all that is noble and grand in human nature was cultured by the priest-philosophers who sought to develop them in their initiates. Their code of ethics was based on altruism. So what did people learn in the mystery schools? The information in the greater mysteries was passed down only to those who could access self-born wisdom. Now, this is wisdom perceived intuitively from master to initiate. But it sounds hard, but you're all familiar with it because this is our conscience that prompts us to do right, and we know it deep inside. And as we develop this, we develop our intuition for the higher initiations. So the esoteric wisdom needs to be conveyed intuitively, and this is for adeptship when we're on the higher planes, because it is such a large amount of information. Blavatsky says that the whole essence of truth cannot be transmitted from mouth to ear, nor can any pen describe it, unless a man finds the answer in the innermost depths of his divine intuition. There is so much information, like how the laws of nature worked or the angelic kingdom, that the intuition is needed to absorb it all. Because the mystery schools were secret and the mysteries and the mystery schools respected that, not much was written about them, but we do know what other Greeks wrote about them. One is the mystery school of Pythagoras, and the outer court of the temple refers to the lessons in the lesser mysteries. Discipline was taught to control the lower nature. Women were admitted, and vegetarianism was encouraged or required at this point. Meditation was expected, and 5 years of silence was imposed. So you can imagine, very hard to do, and many failed to keep their vows and were thus sent home. So the silence teaches us to quell all the stuff in the personality, our wants, our not liking someone else in the mystery school, all of that. It just is to be totally discarded. Disciples had to reject all worldly privileges from a noble birth or family wealth. If a person displayed pride or arrogance, menial duties were imposed upon him. If they were taught self-examination, where each morning the disciple was to seek out weaknesses and correct them. Then before retiring at night, he was to review his conduct to find failings and their consequences. Meditation was extremely important to develop, and that would bring to us a state of mind where Blavatsky says it would allow us to live in the eternal at all times. This is the goal, to fully know and be aware of the unity of all life. She says, slowly but surely, meditation acts like leaven in the loaf or yeast in the bread to awaken divine intuition. So we also know something about Patanjali's mystery school of yoga. And he had 5 practices to live in the world and 5 for personal development, just like the lesser mysteries that we've just reviewed. So they are telling the truth, satya, and I missed nonviolence, on ahimsa, not stealing, sexual fidelity, and then an important one, not holding on to things or experiences, no jealousy, and aparagraha comes from the root gra, which means to grasp, and a means not holding on to grasping after things. And then the personal observances were cleanliness, contentment, and that's emotional contentment, self-control, tapas, both of the body and the mind, and then self-surrender. And this would be the self-study, and self-surrender would be this witness that would watch ourselves so that we can continue to let go further and further with the surrender. And Patanjali goes on to say that the third is asana. Now, you've probably heard that as a pillow in a yoga class, but that's the posture for meditation, or really the right attitude or frame of mind. And then pranayama, breathing exercises or breath control, but it really means right communication with other living creatures, because we use our breath for that. If we get upset or angry, our breath increases. Keeping calm calms our breathing. And then moving into meditation, pratyahara is withdrawing attention from sense objects, such as we don't think anymore about how we're seated, if the room is cold, or what we're going to do that day. And then deeper meditation is with dharana, centering the mind on the self. And we may have chants like Om Mani Padme Hum or Om. And then dhyana, which is deeper meditation or contemplation. And then samadhi, total absorption in the self. Now that's very hard to do, so we just keep working it, and we may hit that at some point. Annie Besant writes that the levels of initiation in her book on initiation, she says the first one can happen when we're asleep. And I bet everyone here listening has had this first initiation. Now the initiations take place in our astral bodies to access the higher mental planes, our intuition. And since we can't yet work in our astral bodies at will, it may happen when we're sleeping. And one of the effects of this initiation is the deep realization of the, I'm going to get choked up, unity of all life. We know it in our bones. And I just know you all understand that. That's self-born wisdom. She says, she warns us about the guidelines. She says, the more a person develops, the more is demanded. If he errs, karma is swift and stern. So we'll have some consequences if we screw up when we know more about spirituality. She says, until higher initiations, we are to live a noble life in the position that karma has ordained. So that's accepting of our situation and all that we have in our lives. Being grateful and still trying, though. So for the greater initiations, we learn from Gordon D. Peruker. They often take place in a subterranean cave, a forest, a mountain pass, a temple crypt, or a pyramid chamber. Due to that, they're being away from the thought forms and negativity with negative emotions in the society. And the astral light is quieter and cleaner. So here you see the Egyptian initiation chamber in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. And I was there and took this picture and got into the sarcophagus there. And I didn't pick up much spirituality like you feel in life now. It was just very old, but sacred, but very old. So the sarcophagus is where the person to undergo the initiation will lay. And he deliberately places his mind and body in abeyance, or he paralyzes them so he can work in his astral body. And the candidate's body is left in the sarcophagus where attendees watch over it and maybe give it some water, a little bit in the mouth so that he survives. So when you're undergoing these initiation, it affects the person deeply, and he may come back with a halo seen by clairvoyant sight. So you see pictures of this in all religions, actually. Charles Leadbeater describes that when the initiate returns, his head shines with this spiritual light. During a higher initiation, there are cruel trials that the initiate has to overcome on the astral plane. First of all, on the astral plane, now that's where we arise from, because we can't do it from the physical. There are negative entities on the astral plane, as well as emotions and visions of monsters and all sorts of things. They have to be ignored. And then there's tests. The first, the initiate must show that he controls the elements of earth, air, fire, and water, and even penetrate with his higher mind worlds more material than ours. And his intuition shows him the way. Gordon D. Peruker gives us this information about why initiations take place this way. It is one of the fundamental teachings of occultism that nothing can be truly known which is not experienced or lived through. After preparatory purifications, then comes the mystic death. The body's in abeyance. The body and lower principles are, so to say, paralyzed, and the soul is temporarily freed. The inner man is guided while he passes to other planes by becoming them, which is the only way that the knowledge can root itself in the soul through experience. So initiations may last 1 day and night, 3 days and nights, or up to 2 weeks. Higher initiations take place when certain astronomical conjunctions occur, such as with a new moon, where the moon is directly between the earth and the sun. So you can see the unillumined part of the moon at that time. Greater initiations take place when there's a conjunction of Venus, Mercury, and the sun, because that's where the initiate is headed. The fifth and highest initiation is when adeptship occurs and takes place at the winter solstice, and it lasts 2 weeks. So these planetary conjunctions allow the initiate to move along magnetic lines to leave the earth and ascend through Venus and Mercury to the sun, and then return. The master becomes, for a passing moment, the wondrous watcher himself, the solar logos. After the fifth initiation, the initiate returns 2 weeks later on Epiphany in Christianity, maybe January 6th, or 12 days after Christmas. So Epiphany comes from the Greek epi, meaning upon, and pheno, to shine forth. That's the divine light from the initiate. Now, the greatest known initiation is the birth of a Buddha, and it happens at the winter solstice with conjunctions of moon, Mercury, Venus, and the sun, and it's very rare, happening maybe once in a root race or 8 to 9 million years. Now, these conjunctions don't occur very often, but initiations still go on just the same at the 3 other sacred seasons, the spring and fall equinoxes, and the summer solstice. And that's when lesser candidates are initiated. So these mysteries were known around the world, such as by the Druids of Ireland and Scotland, the priests of Mithraism. That was Mithra, the sun god, worshipped in the Roman Empire, 2nd and 3rd centuries, current era. And others initiated into the mysteries include Jesus. Excuse me. So Jesus, oh, wait a minute. There we go. Sorry. Initiated into the highest initiations are Jesus, Krishna, and Apollonius of Tyana, Tsongkhapa, the Tibetan Buddhist monk, Shankaracharya, the Indian sage, and Plato. Christian Rosenkreutz, the founder of the Rosicrucians, and he was said to be an incarnation of Comte de Saint Germain, and he learned the mysteries in Egypt. And the Rosicrucians are still around today. But what happened to the mystery schools? Some died out or had to go underground, as Freemasonry did. The Eleusinian mysteries lasted more than 1,000 years, initiating noblemen, commoners, women and men, and free persons as well as slaves. Christianity flourished, and the mysteries of Eleusis, unfortunately, were thought to be subversive and were closed. And the Roman Emperor Theodosius II banished paganism in favor of Christianity, and the mysteries in the West ended. Then Justinian I closed the last philosophical school of Athens, Plato's Academy. And this actually wasn't so bad, because HPB says that the sacred ritual of the union of the soul with the higher self had turned into an orgy. So the mystery tradition went underground and was preserved in Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, Kabbalah, alchemy, and Freemasonry. But we're not to be discouraged. Master Kuthumi said, "Fear not, our knowledge will not pass away. The keepers of the sacred light did not safely cross so many ages ago to be wrecked on the rocks of modern skepticism." So we have Theosophy to help us with this process. The process is difficult, but there still is a road to follow. HPB teaches us there is a road, steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road. There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer. There is no trial that spotless purity cannot pass through. There is no difficulty that strong intellect cannot surmount. For those who win onward, there is a reward past all telling. The power to bless and save humanity. For those who fail, there are other lives in which success may come. So hopefully these teachings and the information inspire you to live as the mystery schools taught, and one day receive the higher initiations of the greater mysteries. Namaste. So there may be questions you have. I don't know how to stop the share, because like I said before, I don't have options for that. So I was looking again. Screens. No, that would be my own. Documents, that would be my own. Sorry. So
So I have a question.
back. So you see me down there?
Yep. Sue, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So you talked about the masters coming from the third root race, and you mentioned the third root race is kind of this misty, foggy kind of composition. Is that what we would expect the masters to be now today? Is it kind of an ethereal kind of being, or if they came from the third root race, how would that now be represented?
Sure. Okay. That was to tell you how humanity was created. And at first, everybody, well, we still, sorry, at first, everybody was mindless in the third root race. But the masters and the divine teachers may have come from Venus. You know, they talk about this is getting into a whole different area. So the masters were still developing with us, and there we go. I see you. They developed, and then in the third root race, where the Manasaputras gave us our minds, and then they taught us how to live rightly. Some of those followed the spiritual inclination and developed well, so they were chosen to have the initiations. Now, the masters, when they were doing this, we were still in the animal kingdom, we normal humans. So they were just ahead of us, like may have been in high school and we were just in kindergarten. But with the humanity on our globe in the third root race, in the Lemurians, we were still ethereal at the beginning. But the Lemurians, that root race lasted millions of years, and that's when we developed our minds. And we became more physical, and we moved from cyclopean to 2 eyes. So then in the fourth root race, in the Atlantean root race, is where we needed the mystery schools, because we started taking advantage of some of this power, the Kriya Shakti that people had. And so now humanity is still reaping some of the karma from that era, because a lot of things kind of went wrong. So does that help? That was kind of lengthy.
I think that's going to help without diving too deep into it. Thank you.
This is new stuff. A lot of times that discussion of how the root races evolved is very new and kind of hard to fathom. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Alex, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Sue, for your presentation. I was curious about, you had a slide with the breakdown of the lower self and the higher self, and each one had several divisions. I was curious about the connection between the two, between the lower and the higher, and exactly how to think of that. I mean, you talked about initiation, which is kind of the practical aspect of maybe creating that connection. But I was wondering, do the traditions see the connection as really, in a sense, innate to our soul, and just looking to be kind of reestablished, to be maybe something we lost along the way? Or does initiation actually create that connection with the higher self? I'm wondering how to think about that
Sure.
aspect.
Sure. So, well, initiation comes when we've developed that within ourselves. So we have to have this higher connection to our intuitive mind, Buddhi Manas, in order to have the fifth initiation, the masters. But we've all, I think, had the first initiation from when we're on the astral plane, and we learn from whatever the masters about the unity of life. So let's see, there was a first part of your question. So everybody has, like, if you think of eons ago, the cavemen, they also had the higher mind there, but it was very subtle and maybe from instinct. When we were still fumbling around, maybe not realizing, when we're physical beings, when we were not realizing that everybody deserved respect, there was probably more killings going on when we were, just did what we felt like. But that would be physical, plain humans. And that was in maybe the fourth root race. And in the fifth root race now, we have new people maybe eons ago coming in. So it is a little confusing. Because we didn't start off with like the Neanderthals, we evolved through these root races to become physical. But then on our globe, our Earth, there's more of a development that happens. It gets into some of the theosophical principles about the chain of globes and the development of humanity. And that is pretty confusing. And right now I can't summarize it.
Well, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you. I mean, the reason I ask is I know within Platonism, for example, and Neoplatonism, there is this idea that the soul came from another place. The soul came from a place of purity and complete knowledge, but there was a sort of fall, and we find ourselves in the material universe now, and and most of us don't remember that original, the place where we come from. And I wonder how much of that is a part of maybe theosophical doctrine or Blavatsky and so on. And maybe there's some differences, some nuances, but I'm wondering if that's a way of thinking about this.
Yes, it is, because this is pretty complicated stuff. And so myths and legends have been developed to help understand it. So Theosophy speaks about, well, so let's say the first fall in Christianity is where Adam eats the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So this is when we are physical beings, where we truly know good and evil. And the serpent is the divine wisdom. And that is what is offering Eve the fruit to pass to Adam. And so that's Theosophy, in that at the beginning, there's nothing but the oneness. I'm going to draw out really quickly. We discussed this earlier. We have nothing but this unity. You can see the circle with the black background. And then what has to come from that, this is all symbolic because it doesn't happen fast like this. But when manifestation is going to happen, we have a dot in the center, and that's Blavatsky with the symbols on a black manuscript. And then we have the divine feminine, which is horizontal. And then we have the divine masculine. It's the same either way. But anyway, that's the duality. And that's the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the duality there that Eve is offering to Adam. And then, that's a whole nother discussion, but it allows for human being to be created, and the symbol is the cross. So these myths, so Platonism has mythology too, as well as alchemy with the king and the queen. It's that dual aspect, the sun and the moon, and that's spirit and matter. That's basically what that is. And anyway, lots of references that may be a little confusing. Hopefully you could follow.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Sue?
I don't see anybody in the audience there in person. So was that confused? Oh, there is one in the back. It's a small screen.
That's all. Excellent program, Sue. You did a fantastic job covering the very basics of Theosophy in addition to the mystery schools. I really, really appreciate what you had to say today. Fantastic.
Well, you're sure welcome. Let me ask you, was it too complicated, over your heads type thing?
No.
Okay, you're shaking your heads. Good, because I wanted to make it super simple, but this is all tied in with the mystery schools and why. And so I wanted to include all of it. So great. I'm glad that you could follow.
You need about 5 or 6 new paths to follow.
Yes. Yeah, it takes a lot to integrate it, that's for sure. But we have wonderful books.
Thank you, Sue.
Well, you're sure welcome.
Those of you that didn't get enough, we do have copies of Sue's book here that are available. Also, we are a not-for-profit organization and welcome your donations. To learn more about us and to make your contribution, visit our webpage at theosophical.portland.org and learn about our library and meeting times. And you people on the Zoom call, go there and let us know.